My name is Emma. I am a very successful architect today. I design massive modern buildings. My life looks incredibly perfect from the outside. I have a lot of money now, but my heart is totally cold and empty inside. I do not trust anyone in this dark world. I built a thick ice wall around my lonely soul. I learned a very cruel lesson long ago. Family love is just a stupid, dangerous lie. Blood means absolutely nothing. I remember that terrible dark day very clearly. I was only 10 years old. My father and I stood inside a massive train station. The station was completely full of busy travelers. People walked past us very fast. The loud train whistle hurt my small ears. It was a freezing cold winter afternoon. I wore a bright red wool coat to stay warm. My father bought that beautiful coat for my birthday. I loved it very much. I held my father by his large rough hand. I felt completely safe next to him. Suddenly my father stopped walking. He looked around the crowded station with wide eyes. His face became incredibly pale and totally white. He started breathing very fast and very hard. I looked up at his face with deep confusion. I asked him about his sudden sickness. He did not answer my simple question. His eyes darted around the noisy room. He saw something very scary in the dark crowd. I tried to look behind us, but he pulled my arm very quickly. He dragged me to a long wooden bench. It was near the busy ticket office. He pushed me down onto the hard wooden seat. He pulled a small paper train ticket out. He pushed the paper ticket into my shaking hand. His rough hands were trembling violently. He told me to stay perfectly still. He ordered me to never leave the seat. Then he did something completely strange and totally crazy. He pulled my beautiful red coat off my shoulders. The freezing winter air hit my thin arms immediately. I felt very cold. He hugged my bright red coat tightly. He pressed it against his own chest. He did not say a warm goodbye. He did not give me a sweet kiss. He just turned around without a single word. He ran directly into the busy, noisy crowd. I watched his tall figure disappear completely. I saw the bright red color for a few short seconds. Then he was completely gone forever. I sat on that hard bench obediently. I waited for him for many long hours. The bright station lights turned off slowly. The busy crowd left the cold station entirely. The freezing winter night arrived with a bitter wind. I shivered violently in my thin clothes. I cried silent hot tears in the dark. The empty station felt incredibly scary. The station guards finally found me at midnight. I sat completely alone in the freezing dark. My father threw me away that cold, dark night. Police officers took me to an orphanage. I never saw his face again. I hated him with my broken heart. He chose his own freedom over my life. I promised to forget his ugly name completely. The police car ride was very quiet and cold. They drove me to a large gray building. It was the city orphanage for lost children. A tall woman with a cruel face opened the heavy door. She pulled me inside the dark, scary hallway. I felt completely alone. The orphanage was a truly terrible place. We slept on hard beds in a large, cold room. The winter wind blew through the broken windows. We ate thin soup and old bread every single day. The older children were incredibly mean to me. They laughed at my sad tears. They pushed me into the dirty walls. They called me the unwanted trash of the city. I cried in my small bed every night. I remembered my father and his sudden escape. I thought about my beautiful red coat. My deep sadness slowly turned into pure anger. I realized crying was a stupid weakness. I stopped crying completely after one long year. I built a strong iron box around my heart. I locked my painful memories inside that dark box. I promised to become very strong and powerful. I wanted to punish the whole world. I used my cold anger as endless energy. I studied my heavy school books every single night. I slept for only 3 short hours. I ignored the cruel jokes of the other children. I became the smartest student in the entire school. I wanted to escape this gray prison. I finally left the orphanage at 18. I walked out of the heavy iron gates. I had no money and no friends. I legally changed my full name that very same day. I completely erased my father from my life. I was a brand new person now. I worked 3 cheap jobs to pay for college. I washed dirty dishes in a noisy restaurant. I cleaned dirty floors in a large hospital. I saved every single coin I made. I entered a very famous and expensive university. I studied massive architecture books all day long. The rich students wore beautiful warm coats. I wore thin cheap clothes in the winter. But I completely ignored their stupid rich games. I easily destroyed my weak competitors in class. I won a huge prize for my building design. A top company offered me a great job. I became a famous architect very quickly. I designed tall modern buildings of glass and steel. My buildings were incredibly strong and totally cold. They were exactly like my own frozen soul. I made millions of dollars from my beautiful designs. I bought my massive luxury apartment. Many handsome rich men tried to win my heart. They bought me beautiful, expensive red roses. They promised me a sweet, forever love. But I pushed them all away very quickly. I remembered the dark train station perfectly. Love was just a dangerous trap for weak fools. I totally refused to build a warm family. I always preferred my lonely and quiet life. I looked at the bright city lights every night. I felt completely safe in my tall glass tower. The scared little girl was finally dead. The red coat was just a dirty memory now. It was a very busy Tuesday morning. I sat in my massive office on the top floor. I looked down at the tiny cars below. My phone rang with a strange unknown number. I almost ignored the loud ringing sound completely. But I answered the sudden call anyway. A man with a deep voice spoke to me. He said he was a police officer. He called from a very small country town. The town was incredibly far from my big city. He asked for my legal name and my date of birth. His tone was totally serious. I confirmed my personal details very quickly. I demanded to know the reason for his call. The police officer took a long, deep breath. He told me they found an old dead body. They used a new DNA matching system recently. They identified the dead man successfully. The officer told me the man's full name. It was the exact name of my father. My cold heart stopped completely for a second. The dark past suddenly crashed into my perfect room. The dead man was a crazy homeless beggar. He died in a local mental hospital. The officer asked me to claim his body. I felt a sudden rush of bitter cold anger. The dirty coward finally died in total shame. He deserved a lonely death in a crazy hospital. I wanted to hang up the phone immediately. I wanted to forget this garbage. But a dark, heavy feeling stopped my shaking hand. I needed to see his dead face with my eyes. I needed to close this ugly chapter completely forever. I told the officer I would come today. I canceled all my important business meetings immediately. I grabbed my car keys. I walked out of my beautiful tall glass building. I drove my expensive car out of the city. The long drive took 4 incredibly boring hours. The scenery changed from tall buildings to empty fields. The sky became very dark and incredibly cloudy. Heavy rain started falling slowly. I drove through the heavy rain in total silence. I did not turn on the car radio today. I thought about my prepared angry words. I wanted to scream at his dead, frozen body. I wanted to tell him about my massive success. I survived his cruel abandonment. I finally arrived at the small country town. It looked incredibly poor and totally depressing. The police station was a very small brick building. I parked my expensive car in the dirty lot. I took a deep breath of the wet air. I walked inside the quiet station. An old police chief sat behind a wooden desk. He looked at my expensive clothes with great surprise. I told him my name with a cold, flat voice. He stood up slowly and nodded his gray head. He looked incredibly sad and very tired. He pointed to a cheap chair. I refused to sit in the cheap chair. I demanded to see the dead body right away. The old chief sighed and shook his head. He said the body was at the hospital morgue. He wanted to show me personal items first. He opened his heavy wooden drawer. The old police chief pulled out a heavy gray box. He placed it carefully on the wooden desk. He looked at me with deep pity in his eyes. I absolutely hated that weak look of pity. I crossed my arms tightly across my chest. I waited for his slow explanation. He opened the old police file slowly. He started telling me a very strange story. They found the man 20 long years ago. He was walking near an old dark highway. He was 20 miles away from the big train station. It was the exact night he left me. The man had massive, terrible injuries on his head. Somebody beat him very badly with a heavy weapon. He was completely covered in dark red blood. His face was totally broken and completely unrecognizable. He did not have a single dollar or any ID. He was a complete mystery. An ambulance took him to the local hospital quickly. The doctors performed emergency surgery to save his life. He survived the terrible physical trauma miraculously. But his brain suffered massive permanent damage. He completely lost his entire memory. He forgot his own name and his past life entirely. He woke up in the bright hospital room eventually. He could not speak a single word to anyone. The police tried to find his real identity for months. They took pictures and searched missing person records. But nobody came looking for the broken man. He became a totally forgotten ghost. The city moved him to the local mental hospital. They called him John Doe in the official medical records. He lived in that gray building for 20 long years. He spent his entire life in a small, quiet room. He never caused any trouble or fought with the nurses. He just sat near the small window every single day. He looked at the outside world with empty eyes. He did not remember any friends or any family members. He did not remember the little girl at the train station. His mind was a completely blank white page. I listened to the old police chief in total silence. My cold anger started changing into deep, dark confusion. Why was he beaten near a dark, lonely highway? Who attacked him so violently that cold winter night? My perfect story of cruel abandonment had a strange new hole. I thought he ran away to start a new life. I thought he wanted to be completely free from me. but he actually spent his freedom in a mental hospital. He lived a terrible, lonely life in a locked room. My rich success felt completely disconnected from his tragedy. The old police chief closed the gray file slowly. He said the man died of heart failure last week. He finally found true peace after 20 silent years. Then the chief pushed the heavy gray box toward me. He said the man kept 2 items with him always. The hospital staff found the items in his cold hands. He died holding these strange, dirty objects very tightly. The chief asked me to open the heavy box now. My heart started beating incredibly fast in my chest. I reached my shaking hands toward the gray cardboard box. I pulled the lid off the heavy gray box. My hands trembled violently. I expected to see a dirty wallet or useless garbage. But the reality was completely different. The box held a massive dark shock. I looked inside the dark box very slowly. I did not find secret letters or hidden money. A large pile of faded red wool sat inside. It was covered in dark brown stains. The stains looked exactly like old dried blood. I reached into the box with shaking cold fingers. I pulled the red wool fabric out carefully. It was incredibly small and torn into pieces. I recognized the beautiful shiny buttons immediately. It was my bright red coat from my childhood. It was the exact coat from my 10th birthday. It was the coat my father took from me. He took it at the busy train station that cold night. My mind spun rapidly with wild confusion. Why did he keep my winter coat? Why was it covered in blood? I dropped the dirty, torn coat onto the desk. The old police chief watched me with quiet, sad eyes. I felt totally sick in my cold, empty stomach. I looked back inside the gray cardboard box. There was one more small object at the bottom. It was shiny metal. I picked up the heavy silver pocket watch slowly. The clear glass face was completely shattered and broken. The tiny metal hands were totally bent and ruined. The watch did not tick or make any sound. It was completely dead and totally useless. I pressed the small silver button. The metal cover popped open with a loud click. A tiny piece of paper sat inside the watch. I pulled the paper out with very careful fingers. I unfolded it under the bright station lights. It was a tiny old photograph. The beautiful colors were very faded. I stared at the tiny picture with wide eyes. It was a picture of a smiling young girl. The girl wore a beautiful bright red winter coat. The smiling little girl was me at 9 years old. He kept my picture inside his broken silver watch always. My breathing became incredibly fast and totally shallow. The thick ice wall around my heart started cracking rapidly. The old beggar did not throw me away completely. He kept my red coat for 20 long years. He held my smiling picture in his dirty hands forever. The police chief handed me a clean white tissue. I finally sat down heavily with weak, shaking legs. The cold, hard truth started changing my entire reality. The story of my cruel father was completely wrong. Everything was totally different now. I looked at the blood on the torn coat. The dark stains told a very violent and scary story. He did not run away to find a new life. He ran into a terrible, bloody nightmare that night. I needed to know the full hidden truth right now. I looked at the old police chief with deep desperation. I begged him to explain the dark, bloody mystery. Who destroyed my father and stole his entire memory? Why did he take my red coat into the busy crowd? The chief opened the gray file again. The old chief turned the yellow pages. He looked at me with deep sadness. He began to read the old reports. He explained the dark police investigation clearly. A very dangerous criminal gang operated back then. They actively stole young children from busy stations. The bad men always looked for easy targets. They wanted young children with rich clothes. They specifically targeted bright and visible colors. My beautiful red coat was very bright. The cruel criminals watched me that winter day. They moved slowly toward my wooden bench. My loving father saw the dangerous men. He recognized the terrible trap instantly. He knew we could not run away together. The bad men were simply too fast. He made a very brave sudden choice. He decided to save my little life. He quickly pushed the ticket into my hand. He took my bright red coat away. He held the coat very high up. He ran away in the opposite direction fast. He wanted the whole gang to follow him. He bravely became a human decoy. The greedy criminals saw the bright red coat. They thought he carried the little girl. They chased him out of the station quickly. They followed his tall figure into the dark. My father successfully saved me from the gang. I remained perfectly safe and alive. The dangerous men caught him far away. They finally realized the girl was not there. They became incredibly angry and very violent. They loudly demanded to know my secret location. But my brave father stayed completely silent. He completely refused to say a word. The mad criminals beat him without mercy. They broke his old bones very badly. They hit his poor head many times. They left him on the cold highway. They thought he was completely dead then. But he miraculously survived the terrible attack. The severe head injuries destroyed his mind. He woke up with no memory later. He forgot the dangerous child traffickers completely. He forgot the big crowded train station. He even forgot his own name entirely. But he always kept the red coat. He hugged the bloody coat always. The hospital staff could never take it away. He protected the coat every single night. It was his only connection to me. His physical brain forgot my young name, but his soul remembered his sweet daughter. I sat in the quiet office. A massive wave of pain hit me. The cold ice wall broke completely now. I was a completely blind and cruel fool. My poor father was a true hero. He sold his whole life for me. He did not throw me away. He saved me from a terrible nightmare. He suffered 20 long years of hell. He lived in absolute silence for me. Hot tears ran down my pale face. I screamed in my deep, heavy heart. The old chief looked at me. He placed a gentle hand down. He said my father loved me deeply. His deep love was truly beautiful always. I felt a massive weight of guilt. The pain was incredibly sharp inside me. I looked at the bloody coat. I touched the shattered silver watch. My long years of intense hatred died. Only bitter regret remained tonight. I needed to see his dead body now. I stood up with weak legs. The old police chief walked me down a dark hall. We went to the cold hospital morgue together. My legs felt incredibly heavy and very weak. A quiet doctor waited for us near a metal door. He looked at me with kind eyes. He opened the heavy cold door. I stepped into the freezing white room slowly. A body lay quietly on a metal table. A clean white sheet covered the quiet figure. The doctor pulled the white sheet back gently. I saw my father for the first time again. He looked incredibly old and very fragile. His white hair was very thin and messy. His face had deep scars from the terrible beating. His eyes were closed in a peaceful long sleep. His large rough hands rested carefully on his chest. Those hands fought a dark gang to protect me. I touched his cold hands. The kind doctor spoke to me with a soft voice. He cared for my father at the mental hospital. He told me about my father and the red coat. My father carried that bloody coat every single day. He folded it perfectly every morning. He hugged it every night. He never allowed anyone to touch the dirty coat. The nurses tried to wash the old blood away once. He fought them with incredible strength and deep anger. He thought they wanted to hurt his sweet little girl. The hospital staff finally understood his strange rule. They stopped trying. He lost his entire memory of the real world. He forgot the names of colors and normal foods. He did not know the current year or the season. But his strong soul remembered his most important job. He was a father and a brave protector. His love never died. He protected my memory in total silence. He sat by the hospital window for 20 years. He watched the outside world with sad eyes. He waited for a dangerous enemy to return. He stayed ready to fight for me again. He was my silent guardian. The doctor said my father became very sick recently. His weak heart started failing him last week. He lay in his hospital bed with heavy breathing. He held the torn red coat against his chest. He pressed the broken silver watch into his hand. He refused to let go. He died peacefully on a rainy Tuesday morning. He took his last breath holding my childhood items. He completed his important mission successfully at last. I fell to my knees on the cold floor. I cried loudly in the quiet white room. The heavy guilt crushed my dark soul. I punished him in my mind for 20 years. I hated him with my entire cold heart. I built my massive success on pure dark anger. But he gave up his whole life for me. He lived in a lonely hell to save me. I was completely wrong. I kissed his cold, scarred forehead gently. I whispered my late apology into the freezing air. I told him about my successful life now. I told him I was completely safe today. I begged his brave soul to forgive my anger. My hot tears washed his face. I held a small and simple funeral for him. It was a very quiet and private day. I buried my brave father in a sunny place. I chose a large green tree for his shade. I bought a white stone headstone for his grave. I carved his real name on the white stone. I did not want his name to be forgotten again. I felt a very deep peace in my heart. The long 20 years of hatred were finally over. I forgave myself for my long and dark mistake. I remembered his love every single new day. It was my light. I walked away from his quiet grave very slowly. I had a new mission for my entire life. I contacted a famous and very skilled private lawyer. I wanted to hunt down the old criminal gang members. I used all my money to find the bad men. The police helped me with the difficult case. We found the leaders of the gang after 1 year. They were living in a very far sunny country. The law finally caught up with those cruel men. The judge sentenced them to many years in prison. My father finally got his full justice today. The dark storm ended. I quit my big job as a famous architect. I sold my massive luxury apartment in the busy city. I donated my millions to the city's hospital for children. I wanted to help sick kids like I was. I opened a small shelter for lost poor children. I gave them a warm home and a bright future. I live a very simple and very quiet life now. I do not wear expensive silk or shiny gold. I wear soft cotton clothes every single day. I find great happiness in the simple daily things. I watch the children play under the large green tree. I feel his spirit near me. I keep the broken silver watch on my desk. I look at my red childhood coat every night. These items are my most valuable and precious treasures. They remind me of his deep and brave love. I am finally a complete and happy human being. My soul is warm and full of life. I sometimes visit the sunny grave at the park. I tell him about the happy children at home. I tell him I am safe and very strong. I promise to be a brave person like him. I know he is watching me from the high sky. His love is a bright star in my heart. The red coat taught me a very beautiful lesson. Life is not about money or tall glass buildings. Life is about the love we give to others. He gave his life so I could live mine. I am the lucky keeper of his beautiful legacy. I will honor his love forever.